Welcome to session 4 for professional development. I'm going to talk a little bit about the continuum of the work that you've done so far. So you began with this idea of a session about something that you were excited or interested or a need that arose. Then you gathered a whole bunch of content for that particular idea. And then last session you organized it in the way that you thought fit your idea best in order to present it to an audience. But we're going to switch gears this week and we're going to talk about the actual audience, the stakeholders, the people in seats in your session themselves, and kind of talk a little bit about things that we can incorporate into our planning process so we can help those stakeholders on the day of. And then next week, we're going to follow up with parts that make your presentation fit and match those needs, and then how to support your idea after your session so that your idea that you teach and implement sticks around. So we're going to be using our book text this week when we talk about how to support our audience in our professional development. So we're going to be reading 2 different chapters this week. We're going to be reading part of chapter 3, pages 106 to 118, and the entirety of chapter 4. And we're reading these 2 this week when we talk about audiences, because chapter 3 talks about this concept of sharing and utilizing and navigating power in our presentations so that we can get conversations going in a way that's safe and that encourages people to facilitate themselves in our sessions. And then we're going to be talking about adult learners and what they need in chapter 4. So there's going to be a question that goes along with each of these chapters. So as you're reading, I want you to think about this. So in chapter 3, creating transformative learning spaces is entirely dependent on how you invite conversations or seek understanding, strengthen trust, and how you listen to participants. So I want you to think about, as you're reading that section, how can you intentionally plan to incorporate some of the suggestions they talk about in order to share power during the session? So what begins or has begun as your big idea you're excited about can be their big idea too. And then when we get to chapter 4, I want you to think about adult learners. And I want you to reflect on the 7 different principles they talk about related to adult learning. And I want you to think ahead to the session that you're planning. What are some of the practical tips that you can take out of this adult learning principle session in order to support the session that you're building? So those are your 2 questions and your homework for the week. We're going to pick back up on your actual session and finishing it off next week. But I want you to think about, before we get to that part, the people that are going to be involved with your session. So next week, we're going to focus back on that delivery. I'm going to go back a little bit so you can see. And then after that, you're going to have a presentation ready to go. We're going to talk about how you can use that presentation and what comes after it to make sure your idea doesn't stop at that single session.